Hey, good morning, everybody. This is James Fee from Geo. This is, I think, episode 6, right, Madeline?
Yeah, it
This is the
is.
sixth one. I think that's a streak by now, right? I'm joined with Madeline Steele, as always, in Portland, Oregon. How you doing this morning, Madeline?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful 80-degree day here in Portland.
It's just how it is here in Tempe, give or take about 25 degrees. And I'm also joined with our very special guest today, Tyler Bell of Factual. How you doing, Tyler?
Hey, good morning. I'm feeling very special. Thank you.
Well, you are. You know, it's not. You're the first Tyler I've ever had on the show, so that might be
Congratulations. Well done.
Every Tyler is living the show through you right now. Oh well. So, Tyler, you work for Factual. For those that don't know what Factual is, could you give us the elevator pitch?
So Factual produces definitive data. So essentially we're a large-scale data aggregator. We look for areas where there's tons of data, but it's mixed up, it's very heterogeneous, it's very erroneous, and we basically bring order and sense to it. And so the two verticals we're working in right now are really focused around mobile commerce. And we're creating essentially definitive data sets of places, so small businesses and landmarks, as well as products. We've got about 500,000 products online as well. In fact, we just launched those products 10 minutes ago.
Wow. So this is
Wow.
the coming out.
Yes, I was doing that with my left hand. Wow. I was typing with my right.
So Glenn Letham wants to know: is any of that data big? And if so, what does that mean, right?
Yeah, well, so sort of any discussion about big data, the question tends to start with that, and that's fine. I mean, very often, a lot of us have attended panels where people talk about big data, and that conversation is not the means, it's the end, and people end up debating what big data is about, and that's just a red herring. The Gartner definition is the one that people tend to use, where it's high volume data and or it's high variability, heterogeneity around the data. And then it's going to be, basically sort of, you're going to have tons of it. It's going to move very fast, and it's going to be mixed up is the short answer. It's nothing that we collectively as sort of data specialists or geospecialists haven't been working with. It's just there's more of it. The tools are much more powerful, and we're now working in an asynchronous environment. So it's not the kind of thing where we have to have answers immediately. We can just sort of set a system to go to look at boatloads of data, come back with an answer, and then we figure out what to do with that answer. It could improve production. It could be analytics that make us change how our product works, or how we design a UI interface, or like Factual, basically it acts as a crucible where we throw in tons of data, just data that's got erroneous bits in it. It's sort of like broken and cast off bits. Put it into the crucible, burn off all the impurities, and you're left with a beautiful, clean nugget of information.
Wow, I feel like I'm at a fireplace in winter, and it feels so nice and warm. I can put my hands up to this. Oh, it's beautiful.
Yeah,
so
my metaphors have that power.
Right? Is it 80% spatial? You see my blog post
sorry,
yesterday?
I lost you in the middle there.
80% of all data is spatial in nature,
I did not
right?
see
Isn't
your
that what
blog post,
everybody's...
but thanks for bringing that up publicly.
Have you heard about that? People say that all the time.
Yeah, those. So I've never put any faith in that because the definition is so woolly. Knowing you're probably arguing that it's like 8%.
Or it's 100%, right? It's like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? Everybody's related to Kevin Bacon. Eventually, every data set has a place on the Earth, right?
Yes and no. I mean, I guess you could argue that it's tied to human beings, and human beings are tied to space. But generally things are more spatial than others, and I think arguing about what's extremely spatial and what's not is problematic and doesn't get us anywhere.
But it's the bullet point on your slide deck.
On my slide deck.
Well, maybe not yours personally, but you as GIS professional, right?
You know why that is? Is because so many people don't get geo. When I say people, I mean like executives of large companies. I spent my 2.5 years at Yahoo, and I spent probably I don't know, 7 hours a day convincing executives that geo was more than just dots on a map, that it was analytic, it was holistic. It told us more about people than any kind of behavioral demographic targeting could. And so, I think that statistic comes out of the frustration that any geospatial professional has, is trying to convince others of the significance of geospatial information. And really, it's not just an attribute that you hang off of other data, but it's actually the backbone of the entire sort of data ecosystem. And sort of arguing over what percentage is neither here nor there.
Well, it's funny, I think, what in Yahoo of Geo that I, today that's still around that I actually love, since most of that has been unfortunately gutted. It's the Flickr state shapefile.
Yeah.
I think that, Madeline, have you ever seen that?
I haven't. What is that?
Do you want to explain? You probably explain it better than I can, Tyler. You want to?
So the clever bods at Flickr, including Aaron Cope and Dan Katz, basically said, look, we've got all of these photographs that are geotagged. I can't remember what the number is now. They said, we've got all these photographs that are geotagged. Let's attempt to reconstruct geographies using the geotagged images. And it got, really, if you take every photograph and you assign a longitude and latitude to it, then you get sort of 60, 80 million of these things. You can use that longitude and latitude. Then Flickr goes and they basically add context to that naked coordinate pair, and they say, well, here's the airport it's near, or here's the GeoPlanet entity, the state, the zip code. And what they've done is they've built those clusters and essentially reconstructed geographies from the geotagged images. And the geographies, they represent neighborhoods, and I think they've got some for MSAs and airports. It's dead clever stuff. They're not fun to look at, so if you're looking for something that looks great on a map and aligns with roads, it's not going to work, right? The clustering algorithm isn't that intelligent. Skylar Earle wrote the clustering algorithm that they used. It's now available on GitHub as cluster without the E. And Factual uses it too, by the way. But the great thing is now, if you're doing any kind of geospatial intelligence, if you're doing any kind of point and poly, these kinds of sort of sloppy, scrappy polys are fantastic for building any kind of contextual relevance. But the reason they're so wonderful is the license under which Flickr released them. They're available under, I think, like a CC0 license, so you can pretty much do whatever you want with them and go nuts. And that's why they're so powerful.
Yeah, I'm just surprised how well they look like the actual states. I guess eventually you get enough points that it'll eventually will match the state boundaries, right?
Yeah, and then you've got folks at Microsoft that are doing sort of the same, something very similar on a micro level with different technologies. But the whole idea is you're taking photographs from different vantage points of monuments and areas, and you can now reconstruct the monuments from this collection of photographs. So it's fun just from the simple idea of geotagging an image. We're now being able to reconstruct both the spatial geometries and then those sort of physical monuments that are being captured. It's stunning, and it's only going to get better as more and more data are captured and normalized and contextualized.
Yeah, I love it. I remember, it's been out for a while now. I remember the first time I saw it, my jaw was on the ground, just thinking that it seemed so brilliant at the time, so logical that this is what you would do, but to actually get it done, and as you said, actually license it out in a way that anybody can use. That's awesome.
Superb. And probably one of the proudest things that I did at Yahoo was releasing the GeoPlanet dataset as Creative Commons. That took me me and my colleagues about 18 months to get out the door, just talking with lawyers and talking with folks and saying, hey, we've treated this as proprietary for so long now, but there are actual strengths to its being open and strengths to its being out. And I think a lot of people have benefited from them.
What is this current status of GeoPlanet? Is that still around, or?
Well, the great thing is, once it's out as a Creative Commons license, Yahoo can choose to close the next version. But if they do, you still have the previous version that's out and open. So it's still there. From what I don't have any particular proprietary insight into Yahoo Geo right now. Maps is all being powered by Nokia. The Geo Technologies that I worked on are still alive there. One is called Placemaker, which is the geoparsing platform. GeoPlanet, of course. And then they've got a geocoding API called PlaceFinder as well that was an internal product when I was there. But I didn't play a part in it's releasing it outbound.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think as you mentioned Nokia powering Yahoo. I think I blogged about this last week that some of these companies are actually seeming to do pretty well. That Nokia and to a lesser extent TomTom, but I guess if TomTom signs Apple, that's a pretty good feather in their cap. Nokia is what they're powering Nokia, they're powering Microsoft, they're powering Amazon, they're powering Yahoo. That's that's pretty good business for them, I would assume, right?
Yeah, I don't have insight into any of those deals. What I will say is even the Yahoo one, like I actively fought against the idea of outsourcing our maps and geo platform because frankly I think that any kind of content technology company needs to own that central core technology about knowing where content is, knowing where people are, and then bringing them together. So I don't have any specific insight there, but what I will say is that Nokia, to its credit, has recognized the power of location, and they realize that you can't release a phone successfully without a geo backend. And they are there buying distribution. They're doing these things through partnerships, really, and they've taken their maps platform from something that was pretty scrappy and worked in a mobile environment to something that is now sort of industrial and enterprise and powers all these different third parties. So kudos to them. I think that's awesome. I think it's great that there's competition to Google. My money is entirely on Openstreetmap and Openstreetmap-based derivative. I think the future of mapping is open, and I would put all my money in that quarter.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems at least initially, I think Apple's doing it, Microsoft to a lesser extent, of blending OpenStreetMap data in with, I guess I don't call it proprietary, but TomTom and Navtech.
Yeah, it's proprietary.
Yeah. I was in an argument last week with somebody who said there's no maps that are proprietary because they exist on Earth, and I said, well, licensing issues aside, you might be right.
That's cool. That's all Bernie, man. That's
right. Well, that's exactly what this guy is. So, maybe that's the first step towards getting OpenStreetMap being the base map of everything, is just sort of bringing in places which are sort of easier than the navigation. Which is a little bit harder to do.
Oh,
right?
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think they are two different. Not only a lot of people think of places as being sort of another map layer, right? That you just overlay onto maps. I think of it as something different. It's a different way to navigate. It's a massive enterprise in itself. I mean, Factual deals purely with places. We don't deal with vectors. We don't deal with natural geographies. We don't deal with mapping. We really focus entirely on those places layers, and there's some noble and some interesting initiatives to create an open POI data source. It's tough though. There's got to be a value proposition there, and everybody feels extremely proprietary about the data that they have and about giving it into an open data source. Factual's data it's not open, but we try to make it as open and as accessible as we can. I mean, generally, I'd love to see our data be open one day. Right now, we're trying to build the best global coverage of the world's places as possible, and that includes building a business model. What I'm getting here too is that the whole places initiative, it's going to be bigger than any one player. Right, no single company, Google can't, even Factual can't, which is why we work very closely with partners who give us core data. We normalize it, we match it, we process it, and then we give it back to them. So we're really a data platform rather than a data owner. I've always talked about Factual as a data platform, a data facilitator, as a shepherd of data rather than an owner and a licensor of data.
Yeah, no, and points are easier than anything else. I mean, maybe that's not fair, but I sort of the way that we were just talking about earlier with Flickr, how taking points and creating shape files of states boundaries, those are relatively easy to create from many different data sources. So it's I think in the short term, you can get points really good quickly.
Yeah, I mean, points are easier, right? Like when Madeline was an archaeologist, when I was an archaeologist, all the tendency was move away from points, for God's sakes. The world is not two-dimensional. All entities, no matter their size, have some kind of vector representation. At Factual, we take an active stance against that, not vitriolically, but we tend to balance pragmatic solutions versus sort of semantically pure data solutions. And in an ideal world, we would have outlines of all these different entities, and we would have the stores or the buildings or the venues and the arenas. That's a massive initiative. It's something that I think we would have one day, but right now we just want to get the points in place. Just getting decent geocodes for just 1 point per place for 60 million places around the globe is an enormous challenge. So let's get us there. Let's get to that point, and then we can work with others, or we can enhance our model by type and begin to bring in JSON representations of vector entities. So then you can begin to do point and poly and some really interesting things. So I think we want to get there, but as my role as a product manager, it's always the guy who says no. Hang on, let's get the baseline first. Let's get our foundation, and then we can build a massive cathedral-like edifice on top of it.
Yeah, so it was interesting. Oh, go ahead, Madeline.
Oh, I was wondering if at Factual you do analysis or data mining in addition to your data processing and cleaning? Or?
Yes, I mean a lot of what we do, it's primarily, we're less big data. Sort of that moniker is very much about sort of analytics and logs and understanding human behavior, and we tend to use big data in our pipelines to create definitive data. Big data tools, pretty much sort of we connect through proprietary means a lot of open big data stacks. The kind of analytics we do, we're just going into that now. So, for example, we have a product called GeoPulse, which is designed to give you low latency contextual information about any place on Earth. So if you give us a longitude and latitude, we can tell you the commercial profile and the commercial footprint of an area. We can tell you whether it's retail or professional services, what percentage is given over to hiking and outdoor places compared to restaurants and bars. We can tell you the commercial density. So now that we have all of this information about these 60 million places around the world, we do want to begin analyzing that and then surfacing the results of those analytics out. We don't do any kind of personal identifiable information, no PII, nothing about individuals and where they are and what they do. It really focuses on the world and its places.
So can you, basically extrapolating what Flickr did with getting the state boundaries, can you eventually create polygons from places based on information from users? Is that the hope?
Yeah, well, you've got to have a lot of, we do work with one partner, for example, that's developing a mechanism for, it's just basically sort of a passive location. So the idea is that you leave this thing on, and then your phone, in addition, with some clever algorithms tied to our data backend, can tell like the different businesses that you've stopped in over time, and it does things like automatic check-in, which is rather facile but neat, and then sort of just builds profiles of your life. And the idea is that any activity that you can do can subsequently be geotagged and enriched. So that's pretty cool, but you've got to have a lot of data endpoints. So so for example, like Foursquare, they have a lot of different check-ins for every place. Every check-in will have its own geocode, so they can probably build up sort of venue maps should they choose to do that. We have a lot of inputs, and we could do something similar. So it's less a question of do we have the data and do we have the technological prowess. It's more a question of where does that kind of capability lie on our roadmap? Are people clamoring for that kind of thing now? What kind of high-quality results could we do? Could we expose the results of that product in a way that improves the product the more that people use it? So I think those, that's an interesting direction I'd like to see Factual go go there. But right now, we just want to increase attribute densities for the places that we have. Right now we have 500,000 consumer packaged goods. We want to double that, get that up into a couple of million. So it's really improving the quality of our data, the coverage of our data, the attribute densities of our data. And once the quality is at a point that we're satisfied with, then we're really going to blow it up.
Right? Let's just do it. Can't be that hard.
Oh yeah, 60 million points. Piece of it, really.
I was talking with one of my friends that just got an iPhone, and she was playing around with Siri, right? And I was showing her, you can say, when I get home, tell me this. When I get here, tell me that. And she goes, well, how does that work? How does that work? And I started to explain to her what geofencing was. And you could see her eyes kind of glaze over, like, I don't completely understand what that means. The idea of, when you get close to some point, say that I'm there. And she goes, well, how do you know? And I said, well, you're telling it where you're going so the phone can figure out when you say, remind me when I get to Target to pick up, Kleenex. The phone can tell you're near Target. It doesn't know you're in Target, but it can see you're relatively close to Target, so it goes ding, 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 you're there. And she goes, oh, well, can it figure out when I'm driving along that I want to go to Walmart because they have a sale on Kleenex. And I said, right, well, that's the big hope. Everybody, that's what all the advertisers want to do, right? And I said, I don't know. I mean, I said the idea of being able to do this and being able to share that information, because you have to give up a lot of privacy, right? Some API has got to be able to sell your information to Walmart, to Target.
Yeah, I mean, your information's already being sold to Target. That's almost a certainty, right?
Fair enough.
I would argue, I don't want to throw in the towel yet. A lot of people say if you want to have sort of clever, intuitive geospatial applications that help you as a consumer or in your professional life, that you need to give up privacy. I don't think those are. I don't think that's a requirement, and I push back pretty strongly against tying those two together. In the current models, yes. Right now you've got to give a lot up, and you don't know what's going to happen to your data. There's not the legal framework around it that there should be, but there's not the technological framework that there should be. I remain a huge fan of FireEagle, which was a product launched by Yahoo Brickhouse when I was there. I wasn't directly affiliated with it, but I'm certainly an enthusiast. And what FireEagle did was that it allowed you as a consumer to expose out your location at different granularities to different services. So the idea was that, for one service, you could say, just this service, all it needs to know is the city that I'm in. And this other service can get my longitude and latitude in near real time. And you as the consumer had control. And there's all sorts of reasons it didn't take off. The main reason being it came out of Yahoo, and that's a whole different story. But I think as we get into, especially now that we have the advent of the electronic payments and mobile payments, users are generating massive amounts of data, right? Take your average receipt. This has a geostamp, a timestamp, a couple of product SKUs on it. It has a merchant ID, and it has what you paid for. I mean, that's hugely valuable information. What I'd like to see, sort of my ideal hope, would be that there are data infrastructures and that there are mobile platforms that capture this information under the user's control. And then the user has the ability to surface this out, not to share their location with buddies or to find hookups, but rather to improve their own experience. So basically, you're sharing the location with the service, which makes your experience and your use of the service better. It's a tough call because consumers don't think that way right now, certainly. And of course, everybody's still in this world of shopping around audiences and selling audiences. So it's going to require, we have the technology, it's just going to require a couple of business changes and a couple of mindset changes before we can bring this to fruition.
I think you're right, absolutely right. Recently I just switched to Progressive auto insurance because I was paying way too much with Allstate, right? It's my little, and I'm getting paid for that, so it's serious. In all seriousness, I saw this commercials for that little snapshot thing you plug into your car and you can save more money. And I was looking at it and it says, oh, it doesn't track GPS, it just figures out what time of the day you drive and how hard you brake. I guess those are the two things. So I thought, well, I work at home, I don't drive that much, and I cannot brake very hard. Apparently, no, I brake hard a lot of times. I'm a late braker apparently, so I'm not sure I'm saving any money. But I told my dad I was doing this, try and save, 10, 15%. And he looked at me like I was completely nuts. He goes, they're going to figure out where you're driving and what you're doing. And I started was thinking to him, I said, you know what? To save 15 to 25% on my car insurance? Yeah, sure. I'll let them know where I'm driving, right? I mean, why not?
Yeah, so that's cool for you. That would not fly with me. I'd never put a black box into my car.
Seriously?
Oh, totally. My phone is bad enough. I don't know what my phone's doing. There's so many back doors on that thing. I want to have complete control of the data that it goes out. I want to know exactly what data is going out. I mean, the only way I'd be comfortable with that system if I could look at the raw logs and then see what's being sent to Progressive and then exactly how that affects what's going on. But, those kind of things I think are very, very slippery slopes for consumers. I've got a more conservative attitude around this. Totally, I acknowledge that. But I don't like to be left out of the data pipeline as a consumer.
Fair enough. It is a black box, and it connects at some point to.
It is literally a
Progressive.
black box.
Yeah, it's and they say they don't have a GPS in it, but you got to assume how many wire cellular radios don't have GPS in them, right? It's got to be there. So, oh well. I guess that's just I'm not. I guess I'm younger than I look.
Now, hang on.
Uh-oh.
No, not at all. It's this is a lot of people feel very strongly about this, and they'll say no way, and then people that are indifferent or don't even think twice about it, they're totally on board. And I think generally the awareness within the general sort of consumer world or mobile consumer world, the awareness of what happens to your data, who consumes it, how it's sold and resold, is not known. And any endeavors that shed light on that, I think, are hugely important. I guess what I'm trying to say is, it might be all right for some, but as a technologist, as a consumer myself, I look upon those initiatives with great distrust.
I'm not going to sell him out, but he sent me an instant message right now, and I'm just going to read it to you. He says, call him an uptight person who's going to be left behind. Relax as the needle goes in. The steak tastes delicious.
Yes, I'll just lie back and think of the empire.
Right? Why not, right? Oh, well. All right.
So we have a question from a viewer. Paul was wondering how the mobile merchant data that Factual produces is different from the point of sales data offered by credit card processors.
Right. So Factual, it's very different. Is the opening statement. So Factual is looking to produce a series of data hooks that exist across platforms. So we have a unique identifier for every business in your mall or your downtown, and we're also developing a separate vertical for products. Now, what we attempt to do is we attempt to take every one of these entities, these businesses and products, and then we develop what's called a crosswalk, and we link vendor-specific IDs to our own IDs. So you can come in with an Amazon product code for a consumer packaged good, and you can find out what we call it, and then where some image links are, and what the brand is, and other information about it. But then you can go out and you can find third-party identifiers too. And we do that with places. So, we can tell you how Foursquare calls something, or Yelp, or OpenTable, or any one of our excellent data partners. And so our goal really is fundamentally to have create data entities that are hooks. And they exist across platforms. So no matter really what payment system you're using, no matter what local product you're using, you can hang information off of a Factual data point, and you can communicate with that between these data silos. So really, fundamentally, that's what Factual is trying to do, is provide a data platform that underlies product silos. Now, the credit card companies, they see very different slices of the transactions between consumers, the products, and the merchants. Amex pretty much owns the whole span. Some credit cards own a much narrower swath of that. And Factual doesn't see any of that, certainly. Credit card companies can come to us and help us, say, take a merchant phone number, zip code, and name and resolve that to an entity. But things like first data, they own a lot of those data streams that move throughout. So we don't own any of that transaction data. Rather, what we attempt to do is help application providers, the credit card companies themselves, and really anyone working with this data to enrich that content and make it understandable outside its originating silo.
Cool. So we have a comment I wanted to share. Tob says that I'm with Tyler. I want some control over the data that I send the companies. And just for my part, I agree that Fire Eagle thing sounded pretty cool. It'd be nice to see some new form of that sort of feature.
Yeah, I think you'll see that, especially in mobile transactions. It may be hope over experience, right? With you slide, you pay with your phone, and then your data sort of goes off in the cloud somewhere. But really, I'd like to see the consumer have ownership of that information. We'll see. I think probably something tragic has to happen before it gets on people's radar.
Tragic, wow.
Well, I mean, like the exposure of the UUIDs, right? I mean, so you read that in the news yesterday that 1 million UUIDs linked to users have been exposed. Allegedly, it was found on an FBI laptop, and so that's a massive data breach, and people are tying these things together, and you can learn a lot from that.
Well, as you pointed out, every time I use my credit card, a whole lot of things happen. I use it at the grocery store, and out pops this coupon for some competing product I bought 3 months ago. Someone's tracking me every time I use that card.
Yeah.
It's already gone. It's already lost.
The credit card company is, but how about if you kept that information, and rather than have the receipt or throw it away or maybe shove it in a drawer in the event you need to return it, instead that information is captured electronically, the store is referenced and located, the SKUs are matched to UPC codes, and basically you build up profiles about your purchasing habits, your spending habits, and then you can expose these profiles out to different services to your advantage. You could even sell them out if you chose.
So just to go back to big data for a minute, like everyone talks about it as though it's a sea change in the last few years, the exponential growth of data. But do you think that it's actually solving new problems yet, changing our lives in a tangible way, or is that further out yet?
It's changing our lives. Probably too strong a term because I'd be asked for examples, but we're doing tons of things with big data that we could not do with relational databases. Basically, any kind of fraud prevention mechanism these days is powered by a big data stack, and you get better results out, even though we still get the calls from the credit card company saying you're now in Britain, we've blocked your card. But fraud prevention, absolutely critical. That's the big money one. Human behavior, consumer insights. It's heavy in marketing, heavily in analytics, very, very heavy in fraud prevention. And now there's a lot of companies that will look at just your server logs and optimize your business models and your business processes based on your server logs. So I mean, these kinds of things are big data will power most large-scale consumer platforms on the web. I think it is a sea change in that, like many new technologies, people are doing the stuff they used to do with it in a slightly different way, but slowly we're beginning to see new approaches to data. We are beginning to see how folks can just deal with massive amounts of information. We're no longer sampling. We're looking at everything. And we can do it asynchronously, and the tools now that are at our disposal facilitate a new way of thinking, and we're just beginning to see the fruitions of those new ways of thinking.
Okay, I have one more viewer question. Steve wants to know what you think about SimpleGeo or UrbanAirship. Can you use it for point storage?
Come on, Tyler, I want to hear the answer.
So SimpleGeo, they never found a product market fit. I don't think. SimpleGeo was, they spent a lot of energy and effort around spatial indexing and did some clever things there. The feeling I get though when I say the product market fit is that there wasn't a large. If you were a very large company, you wouldn't want to trust your spatial engines to a small startup, and if you were a very small company, you'd want to do it yourself. Or I mean, I guess you could farm it out, but you can use Postgres, that kind of thing. So it's really those medium-sized companies that appealed to SimpleGeo. And I don't think that the market was really big enough. It's just it's a tough call, and any kind of pure API play is always going to be difficult anyhow. One thing they did do, which was great, is that you could store your own entities and sort of lay them on other layers. Factual doesn't do that, right? We just have our data, and you're in charge of mashing it up as you see fit. UrbanAirship, good folks, like what they're doing. Not much more to say there, really. There's they're making good use of the SimpleGeo team, and I've been impressed with what I've seen.
There you go.
Were you looking for something more controversial, perhaps?
I think I'm sure Steve was, but it is what it is. They're gone. It was a good ride. We may not see another company shooting for the stars and crashing that quickly. So I should keep my mouth shut too, right? Oh well. Well, I think that does it, right, Madeline? Do we have any more questions, or are we all done?
Yeah, we're all done.
Okay, cool. Well, Tyler, thanks, man.
James, Madeline, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tyler. Great.
Next week we have no guest. I'm going to do this myself by myself. So, well, with Madeline, of course. We're going to talk about what it means to be a GIS person, in the context of technology and other stuff. So, thought it'd be fun just for us to talk a little bit. We never had a chance. But after that, the week after that, he's not signed up yet, but we got a big, not as big as Tyler, but a big GIS person, a Canadian. So we're going international. So it should be fun. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, and everybody, have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Tyler.